Hello and welcome to the very first episode of From the Office. I'm your host Ezekiel, and in this episode we'll cover the Buga Sphere, the disclosure process, review of our remote viewings, an evaluation of past remote viewings. For the first time, we are publishing results from remote viewings dating back about 2 years. Back then, we didn't call it remote viewing but psychoarchaeology. This involves the Sumerian depiction as well as the Sabu Disk, which was found in Egypt. So enjoy this new format. First of all, let's start with the Buga Sphere. And I have to say it's just incredible how many people fall for this orb and the entire theater around it. We never actually wanted to mention this sphere again, but we keep getting so many hate messages because we exposed it as a hoax that we had to follow up once more. It's unbelievable how many people send us insulting messages and even threats just because we question the authenticity of this sphere as an alien relic. I'll give you a brief rundown of how we expose this sphere and then offer you the chance to debunk it for yourselves. Think of it as a gift from us to you. We'll give you the clue, and all you have to do is follow up and grab the fame of being the one who debunked the sphere. We don't even want to go into how poorly the graphics were engraved on its surface. The remote viewing was a standard viewing without dissociation and ended after about 2 minutes. 2 hemispheres were positioned with their edges over a device that created the relief on the edge. Then the second was given a negative relief, and the spheres were pressed together using temperature differences, fixed with some type of adhesive or putty. At that point, the viewing was already over, and we started discussing how this thing might actually fly. The first thought was that there could be some kind of drone inside. Drones like that are actually manufactured and then controlled via an airstream. At some point, we received a message from an angler in Germany who told us about fishing lines so thin you can barely see it in the air, especially at a distance and with compressed video. The line hardly refracts sunlight and is practically invisible underwater. The lines are called fluorocarbon and can easily hold the weight of an aluminum sphere like this. Then we dug through some videos, and at one point you can actually see the sphere hanging from something. We're not sure whether it was a video about the Jumbo or the Buga Sphere, because in the end we didn't have the energy to sort through all of it. But here's the tip for debunking. In one scene, the sphere moves from right to left. Then this happens. What if the drone above suddenly drops faster than the sphere, say from a gust of wind or a downdraft? The line holding the sphere goes slack, and then gravity pulls the sphere downward, which swings slightly like a nodding movement before stabilizing. The movement is minimal, lasts about 2 seconds, but you can see it. The sphere makes a small nodding side-to-side motion, then corrects itself. Apart from that, they allegedly found fiberglass inside the sphere. Non-human intelligences can control space and time, but still resort to fiberglass, which might just have been the reflection of a $100 USB microscope. Of course, non-human intelligences rely on 1950s era technology. Since we have received massive insults for our position, some of which even get auto-blocked by YouTube because they're so extreme, we naturally document everything. But honestly, we don't really care what these nuclear physicists think about our opinion. Let's move on to the disclosure process. This word has been thrown around so much lately that it's honestly becoming annoying, and we've decided we won't be using it anymore. And I want to explain why. There is no disclosure process anymore. The disclosure process was essentially finished at the latest with the Virginia incident. No one relevant in the circles that matter could continue to claim that after Roswell, Rendlesham, Virginia, and so on, this was just a made-up phenomenon. What the community is really waiting for is for this knowledge to finally arrive in the public sphere so that everyone knows and can draw their own conclusions. But I will make the following prediction. More than 50% of people will hardly care at all. As long as their phone has an internet connection, their Netflix subscription is running, and Amazon delivers on time, they simply won't be interested. Then there is about a third of people like us, who do find it relevant. There will be discussions about religion, energy, weapons technology, medical therapies, and conflicts among people in the form of wars. New religions in a New Age sense will emerge. Traditional religions will lose significance, and so on. Entire sectors will see massive losses in influence and money, and that is exactly why there will never be a true disclosure. And please get rid of this idea that the CIA is a bunch of incompetent people with no clue about human resources. Stephen Greer alone claims he has hundreds of whistleblowers in the pipeline. Folks, all of this is... There may be a few real whistleblowers, but they are extremely rare. There are two journalists I trust who have a genuine interest in revealing the truth, and those are Ross Coulthart and George Knapp. When I hear people getting all worked up about what someone from Arrow supposedly said or what whistleblower A claimed, it's just irrelevant, because we already know they are here. They have been here for thousands of years, and humans also possess parts of their technology. Let me explain the disclosure process using the following drawing. At the bottom you have the UFOs and the non-human intelligences. Then comes Layer 1, the CIA and other intelligence agencies, where only a tightly limited group of people has knowledge. Then comes Layer 2, the interesting group of people. This group has both knowledge and material samples of the technology and files one patent after another. They build companies in communications and weapons technology and make billions of dollars from this knowledge. And Layers 1 and 2 have absolutely no interest in making this knowledge public because they are earning billions of dollars from it. Next is Layer 3, the congressional representatives who chase the truth in hearings and pretend to represent democracy. But let's call a spade a spade. This layer is constantly played for fools and strung along by pseudo-agencies and half-truths. Then comes Layer 4, the journalists with exclusive knowledge and the whistleblowers. And finally, in Layer 5, the idiots who pay for the entire circus. If there were really an official disclosure, they would show us HD and 4K footage of the technology and the non-human intelligences. Instead, what we get are these blurry, half-baked, it-could-be-anything recordings. There is simply too much money and power sitting in Layers 1 and 2 for there ever to be a disclosure. For me personally, there doesn't need to be a grand reveal. I have no interest in making money off alien technology. I just have two questions. Are we the product of genetic engineering? And how long have you been here? Again and again, this claim pops up that former NASA employee Ed Harris was there when Jimmy Carter was briefed about aliens. They supposedly told him they existed, and that the world's religions were created by non-human intelligences to prevent people from destroying themselves. But look, if they really intended for religions to create peace, that worked out just great, didn't it? Most wars and conflicts are driven by religion, so these kinds of statements should be taken with great caution, especially considering that Judaism itself traces its roots to the creation and god myths of the Sumerians. So go on listening to the Matthew Browns of the world and keep looking at unclear pictures in grainy videos. They keep you occupied with that while probably laughing in their offices with their patents in hand. Let's move on now to the remote viewings that took place only a short time ago. One of the reasons we decided to publish our results online was that we were hoping for some form of collective intelligence to emerge. And that's exactly what happened. After we released the videos, we received numerous tips via email and in the comments section under the videos, which provided us with further clues and hints. For example, in response to our video on flight MH370, we received a tip from a viewer in Great Britain. He sent us a newspaper article from The Guardian dating back to 2016, which included the following. Quote, "A section of wing from missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 shows evidence it was extended upon landing, suggesting a rogue pilot brought it down," an air crash expert says. World expert air crash investigator Larry Vance believes no other theory can explain the fate of the doomed aircraft. Somebody was flying the airplane into the water, he told Channel 9's 60 Minutes program on Sunday. The Australian search has been based on the theory the jet was not under human control when it crashed with 239 people on board, en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing on 8th March 2014, after it inexplicably veered off course and headed south over the Indian Ocean. Vance believes a small section of wing, called the flaperon, found a year ago off the coast of Madagascar, shows definite evidence it was extended at the time of landing, and the extending can only be activated by a person. The failure to find floating debris could also be explained by a slow, controlled landing, he said. Australian Transport Safety Bureau crash investigator Peter Foley agreed the crash could have been the work of a rogue pilot. He said analysis from French authorities showed it was possible the plane was in a deployed state. The flaperon is in the hands of the French, and Malaysian investigators have been unable to take possession of it a year after its discovery. Thank you for the tip. Most of the messages, however, came in about the mass UFO abduction in Asia. We received several references to ex-soldier Michael Herrera, who gave an interview on the Sean Ryan Show. This interview is absolutely worth watching, so please check it out. We have linked it in the description. In essence, Herrera confirms our remote viewing from a different perspective, and our remote viewing supports the statements made by Herrera. Here is an excerpt. Thank you for the tip from the viewer.
And that's when I started seeing the key details of this thing. Like it had like a scale pattern on it, kind of like an octagonal, because the craft itself was like an octagonal shape where you could see points. It had like these vents on every single corner on the middle part of these the panels anyway. There was like a Vanta black. It was like a dark black that would like absorb light. But they had weapon cases in the back of each truck bed. And then they had a shipping container thing. I mean, it looked like a shipping container, but smaller and half the size. For years, I thought, okay, like, there's got to be oxygen supply or like a vacuum sealing thing that you would, because obviously I'm thinking it's drugs. I was like, okay, so this is a very advanced way to do that. Just years of thinking of this. Come to find out, when I gave my speech in D.C. on that Saturday for the Disclosure Project with Dr. Greer, this gentleman, I'm not going to give any detail. I know a little bit about him. He's aware of what was going on. He confirmed, he says, no, he's like, I don't want to leave Michael hanging out there, but I was not expecting to come and talk to you about this. And he says, it's not drugs that they're putting in these shipping containers. He says it's humans.
We also received information related to the case of Dr. Reed, which supports our results. Especially in the case of Dr. Jonathan Reed and the alien in a freezer, there is so much information and potentially misleading information that it is extremely difficult to separate what is credible from what is not. One viewer pointed out that Dr. Reed mentioned in an interview that he noticed the alien smelled of rotting fruit, something I had described in the video as being similar to food waste and vinegar. Another viewer sent us a link to an interview with two women who apparently knew Dr. Reed. However, since we do not use data for which we cannot confirm the copyright holders, and because the statements had poor sound and video quality with the women pixelated anyway, we decided to extract the statements as text and have them read aloud by Miva, our AI character. Unfortunately, we were not able to verify the original source of the data. One of the women is a nurse who worked with Dr. Reed, and the other is a bank employee who managed his account. Both voices are included here. Listen for yourselves. Thank you for the tips from the viewers.
Back in 1996, I'd worked for him for about 5 years at the University of Washington Medical Center. It was in October of 1996, probably about the middle of the month, I think it was around the 15th, that Jonathan came into the office, and you could clearly see that something had happened to Jonathan. He was kind of subdued and quiet. Something had happened to his dog. The weekend prior, and I knew that he was very upset by that, even though he still was very professional in the office. And within about a week, Jonathan no longer existed. His office was cleaned out. We were, the nurses on his staff, were reassigned to other positions in the hospital, and were told as far as we were concerned that Dr. Jonathan Reed did not exist. He never worked at the University of Washington Medical Center, and it would be wise for us to adhere to that thought as well. Otherwise, we would no longer be working as well. There were no questions asked, no questions answered, and that's just the way it was, and it was like he was just completely and totally railroaded right out of the hospital, and the project that we were working on was closed down. The patients were sent to other doctors in the hospital. We were all advised not to speak about Dr. Reed, not to speak about him, not to speak to anybody within the hospital, outside the hospital, whatever. Management had decided that Dr. Reed did not exist, and they were very clear that as far as we were concerned and as far as our job security was concerned, we'd never heard of it. For many years I was in banking. Probably 20 years I was a banker in various aspects of banking. Dr. Reed was a favorite among all the tellers. I mean, he came in and he would often bring his dog because we gave dog biscuits out to dogs in the drive-up to keep them. And so his dog Susie loved coming to the bank. He couldn't drive anywhere near the neighborhood, even if he didn't want to make a transaction, and he came in once or twice a week, sometimes more, and 0.8s over the years. I did a lot of transactions with him as I moved up in the bank loan payments and deposits, and he always had a good account. He had a lot of money. There came a day when we were called into a meeting and we were told that we didn't know him. If anybody asked about him, we never knew this customer. And of course, in banking, there's a huge confidentiality. Anyway, and so we thought, doctor, maybe it was a suit. Of course we wouldn't talk about it. No, we didn't know him. There never was a person. And I went to check his his signature card. I knew all his paperwork, and I knew none of it was there. Nothing. It had been there the night before. Because I had been looking at loan payments and when they come due, and I knew that, I thought that he had one coming due. And oftentimes we did a phone transaction to automatically transfer, and just preparing, and it was all gone, everything. And I basically got in trouble because they said he didn't exist. And I said he did exist. And what was going on? And this was against the law. And they said that if I wanted to work in any sort of banking, that he did not exist. And what didn't I understand? After a while, Jonathan contacted me. As I said, we became friends. And I was very concerned. He contacted me, and we met, not locally at all. And I was willing to do that. I was so relieved to hear that he was alive. But we met several times. So when I went back, I took on the bank. Let them know that I knew they were lying. And I'd be glad to come forward and say that. And I would go forward with a suit, because what they were doing was illegal.
Let's move on now to the viewings that date back around 2 years and were already published on paper at that time. Case 1 is about the depiction of a Sumerian deity. This depiction served as the key element for the session, and some truly surprising things came out of it. The tablet, which is hung like a gong, represents a frequency that was attributed to a deity, 3,835 Hz. The tablet is actually positioned horizontally, and the priests shown on the left side of the depiction would place sand or salt on its surface. Then the frequency was generated, and through vibration, the pattern would emerge, similar to a chladni plate that is set into resonance. This symbol was associated with the star system Sirius, where the origin of the Anunnaki was either suspected or even known. If you tune a radio to the frequency 3,835 Hz, you will receive the following signal. As for the Sabu Disk, which people thought might be part of an engine or a turbine, it turns out to be something much less spectacular. Through the openings, copper wires were pulled, wound tightly to form what was essentially a coil. The priests attached magnets to the left and right sides, which then caused the disk to rotate seemingly endlessly on its own. The priests created an effect that people at the time could not comprehend, and therefore considered it to be a miracle. I hope you enjoyed From the Office. Please write in the comments if you would like to see more of this. With best regards, until next time, I am your host Ezekiel. May peace be with you.